All right, we're going to talk about something called modal interchange or mode mixture or borrowed chords or any other fancy term like that. The basic idea is that you're writing a song in a major key and you borrow a chord from a parallel mode. Hey, I'm Isaac Schanno Johnson, and if you don't know me, I'm a musician, composer, producer, and I make videos about all that fun stuff, music composition, music production, so make sure you hit that subscribe button to see videos like this in the future. So we're talking about modal interchange, mode mixture, borrowed chords. All it is you're playing a song in a major scale and you borrow a chord from a parallel mode. How do we go learning about this? Well, one thing that we can do is spell out our major scale in Roman numerals to get us started. So we have a 1 chord, a 2 minor chord, 3 minor chord, 4 major, 5 major, 6 minor, 7 diminished, and then 1. How do we notice this if it happens in music? Well, some music doesn't just stick to diatonic chords within the major scale, or chords built from the notes within the major scale. Some songs take other chords outside of that scale and then put them into their own song, right? So you could borrow a chord from, let's say, Phrygian and use it in a song in major. That's what some songs do, and you can kind of use this to identify and hear what these different ideas are because they come from these other scales. One way to think about this is learn the Roman numerals for all of those modes. That's what we're going to go through today. How can we identify what a chord is, what mode a chord is from, if it's from a different mode? Let's take a look at that major scale again with our notes. And let's spell out the same parallel mode, but we're going to start with the second mode, Dorian. So Dorian starts on a 1 minor chord, then a 2 minor chord, a flat 3 major chord, a 4 major chord, a 5 minor chord, a natural 6 diminished chord, and then a flat 7 major chord. Now, why do I say these flats? I'm saying these flats, flat 3 major and flat 7 major, because we're going to compare those to the major scale. So our Roman numerals are based off of the major scale, and then we compare the modes to that major scale. Okay, we got that far. Those are the notes of the Dorian scale, the chords. So potential chords to change. A common one here might be 1 major. Another common one could be flat 3 major or flat 7 major. Now those are also shared by a couple other modes, but those are some shared chords that you might notice. Next scale, Phrygian. In Phrygian, we start on the 3rd scale degree of a major scale, and the chords that we have are 1 minor, flat 2 major, flat 3 major, 4 minor, 5 diminished, flat 6 major, flat 7 minor. Now a common one for this is flat 2 and flat 3 major. Those are the most commonly used ones that people use and borrow from major scales. So the next one is Lydian. There we have a 1 major chord, a 2 major chord, 3 minor chord, a sharp 4 diminished chord, a 5 major chord, a 6 minor chord, and a 7 minor chord. So the most common borrowed chords from this scale are probably 7 minor and sharp 4 diminished and 2 major. Now I know that's a couple different chords, but those 3 chords are used in this mode. They're very distinctive of this mode, and you might hear them in other pieces of music because they add a different sound, a different flavor into your music. We have a 1 major chord, a 2 minor chord, a 3 diminished chord, 4 major, 5 minor, 6 minor, flat 7 major. Now, here we have a flat 7 major chord. That's the most common one that you'll see borrowed from this mode. You might also see a 5 minor chord, though that's not nearly as common. So we have the minor scale next, or Aeolian. Here we have a 1 minor chord, a 2 diminished chord, flat 3 major chord, a 4 minor chord, a 5 minor chord, a flat 6 major chord, a flat 7 major chord, and then we're done. This one, the most common, are flat 6, flat 7, flat 3 major. Those are used in major songs all the time. Another common one could be 2 diminished or 4 minor. Now, next scale, disgusting scale, hate it, Locrian. So next is Locrian. In this we have a 1 diminished chord, a flat 2 major chord, a flat 3 minor chord, a 4 minor chord, a flat 5 major chord, a flat 6 major chord, and a flat 7 minor chord. This one I think is a little less common to hear chords borrowed from it, but you might still hear it in some songs. For example, the Banjo-Kazooie soundtrack kind of has a Lydian mixture because you have this 1 chord to a flat 5 major chord as well. Mumbo's Mountain has that in it, 1 to flat 5 major, and it gives it this weird kind of like janky, off, goofy, silly sound kind of in the way that they do it in Banjo-Kazooie, but this one is a little less common. One thing to note when learning about mode mixture, modal interchange, borrowed chords, all 3 of those names, one thing to remember when learning about this stuff is that these have shared chords. For example, Lydian, Mixelydian, and Aeolian, or the major scale, all have a 1 major chord. Lydian and Aeolian both have a 1 major and a 5 major chord in both of them. Some of these modes will have shared chords. Now, that doesn't mean that those chords aren't used, but it means that they're used and you can't really attribute them to one scale, which is fine because we don't really need to do that. We don't need to say, oh, this is a mode mixture or a modal interchange chord from the minor scale and not from Dorian, but it's a flat 3 major chord. Well, those are both shared in those scales, so it doesn't really matter. But the idea is that you know these different scales, you know these different modes, you know how they work with harmonies, and you can kind of see how some songs might pull from one into their own song. Some common examples of this are flat 3 major, flat 6 major, flat 7 major. You'll often hear 1, flat 6, flat 7, 1 major as an ending for something. Another thing that you might hear is 1 to 2 major. That's another common one. Or 1 to 4 minor. That's a really common one, 1 to 4 minor. That one's used all over the place. So these are just some different ideas that you can use in your own music, or you can think about when analyzing a song, right? If you're analyzing a song and you see this chord that's out of the scale, but it's kind of isolated, right? You have lots of diatonic chords, one weird chord that's not in the scale, diatonic chords. And then you can kind of look at that one and say, okay, well, maybe this is coming from a different mode of this scale. Maybe it's coming from a parallel mode. That's what you can look at. It's one way to understand it and analyze it without getting confused about where that chord comes from. How do we analyze these? I would use Roman numerals to analyze most of these chords, and I would just write whatever the chord is in Roman numerals. So maybe you have a flat 3 major chord. I write that as, well, flat and then uppercase 3 in Roman numerals, right? That's kind of just how you analyze it. So it's not actually that complicated of an idea once you get used to it, but we need to remember that we have to approach it from this idea that we're trying to figure out what's going on in the song, not prescribe onto a song what should be done. Because if you do that and then you have a song that doesn't follow those guidelines, it's then breaking the rules and then you can't analyze it, which doesn't really make any sense because it's not breaking any rules. It was the music. It already happened. Somebody already wrote it, right? There's no changing the song that was already written and recorded. So we need to think about it as how can we figure out what's going on in a song rather than thinking how do we use these rules to then write a song. So I like learning about this idea of borrowed chords or mode mixture or modal interchange because it doesn't just help you understand music you're hearing, it also can give you some ideas to use in your own music. If you're getting bored of using the same chord progressions from the major scale and they're all diatonic chords and you're kind of just stuck playing the same chord progressions over and over and over again, think about a mode that you can take a chord from. Think about a mode that you can borrow from and use a chord in your own music. That way, you'll be adding a new flavor into your own music that you didn't have there before, that you hadn't thought of. So here's a quote from one of my favorite books on harmony called 20th Century Harmony by Vincent Persichetti. Now, the reason I really like this quote is because I like to think about this quote when I either analyze a piece of music or when I listen to a piece of music. And when learning music theory or musical analysis or something that helps you figure out and study a song and figure out what's going on, remembering this quote and the attitude of this quote I think is very helpful, because then it gets you out of the prescriptivist mindset. It gets you into a mindset of, how do I figure out this song? What's going on? What tools can I use to understand this music and how it relates to other music a little better? Any tone can succeed any other tone. Any tone can sound simultaneously with any other tone or tones, and any group of tones can be followed by any other group of tones, just as any degree of tension or nuance can occur in any medium under any kind of stress or duration. I like to think about this anytime I'm analyzing a song or trying to study a piece of music, because you're trying to figure out how it relates to other pieces of music in that style, maybe in that time period, and how it relates to other music outside of that style, outside of that time period. Are there other songs that use those similar ideas? Because we need to remember, when we're studying music, composers can do whatever they want. Like, I know that is kind of like obvious, right? You can write whatever music you want, but composers can and have written whatever they want, right? They have certain things that they like to hear, but that's often what they're doing. They're not following certain rules to write that music. They're just thinking about what they like to hear. I also think that quote can be especially useful when analyzing music that's written now or currently, right? The music written now doesn't have to relate to other past music. It doesn't have to relate to other music theory ideas or music theory rules or whatever. It can be doing whatever it wants. It can be, and often is, and I think should be, new in some way. So we need to remember that quote when we're learning about music theory, anytime we're learning about musical analysis. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful. I hope you learned something about music. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. As always, thank you for watching. Peace.